Hey guys, Mark from Periphery here, and this month I'm going to talk to you guys a bit about the song Mile Zero again. We touched on the opening riff from the song last month, and this time I'm going to delve a little bit more into the verse and the pre-chorus riff. There are a lot of really cool, complex chords involved in the verse riff, and the pre-chorus involves some jagged rhythms and sort of angular feels underneath the chords. So yeah, here goes. So this verse riff is another example of writing a section or writing a series of riffs or a riff based around a chord progression. And that was the same exact principle here. I came up with the chords before I wrote the actual progression. And you'll recognize a couple of these chords from previous entries, and you'll see some new ones too. So the riff begins like this. That chord we went over, I think it was in the first entry. So here's that first chord. It's one of the chords we went over previously, and that opens the section. It then arpeggiates into a different chord, the second chord of the phrase. And that's the second one. And that voicing is added at the last second, so you have in total. And then you'll recognize this third one as well, some of you. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's this bad boy. I fret it like this. You gotta get the middle finger up though, all the way. But yeah, I use my thumb to fret the bottom two voicings, and then the rest are with my first, third, and fourth fingers. So if you don't want to use your thumb though, you'll want to play like that. So after that, to go into the second repetition of the riff, it goes right back to the first chord. And instead of going down this time, it goes up on the neck, and this is the second chord. Lots of open strings, lots of open notes there to get that drony sound that I keep referring to. And after that, there's two chugs that lock in with the bass drum. That's part of the drum groove that's going on underneath it. So it goes. And there's a cool technique that happens at this juncture. Something that I like to use a lot of, something I use too much, and some of the other guys say I should stop doing so much, is this string rake. I hear a lot of bands and my favorite players doing it, but sort of picking around the second fret, the actual fret, not between the frets on the neck. And choking up on the pick really, really, really tightly so there's just a little bit sticking out, and you get a really jagged sounding rake. And the thing that's different about this technique in this instance is doing it, and as you reach the lowest note, actually pick the lowest note, as opposed to raking all the strings. So you're raking essentially the first 5 strings, and instead of raking the 6th, you pick down on it. So you're pulling your hand up, and as soon as you reach the top of your movement, pick down, and then finish out the rest of those chugs. But again, and this is another thing, it depends on your pickups, it depends what kind of guitar you're using. You want that sort of stringiness, and by stringiness, I mean like a slapping sound. You want it to almost be percussive. And then the phrase is finished off by traveling right back up to the top of the neck. And that's a fun little thing too. I like to do, you probably heard it in some of our other riffs, is we'll play a note, we'll play a lick at the top of the neck, and then kind of just hit. It's not an arbitrary movement by any means, but the notes are the most important thing when it comes to what note you start at and where you finish. And that leaves you in place to restart the passage. So it sort of ties things up nicely. So this next part I'm going to show you is the pre-chorus of Mile Zero. And it's a really interesting part because it involves a lot of the bigger, brighter, complex chords that you hear earlier in the song, but it involves some of the more angular rhythms that you're accustomed to hearing in our music as well. So one of the more interesting things about that riff is the syncopation and the rhythm that's happening underneath the chords. It references the intro of the song. It's just sort of played in a more sort of unnerving rhythm. It makes a lot of sense with drums underneath it. If you were to sit there and play that for somebody with just a click, like you guys just heard, or sort of by itself, it wouldn't make a lot of sense, but it references the earlier sections in the song. So you have this chord that comes back. I believe I actually mentioned it in a previous column, but it goes like this. Lots of very close intervals that are stacked on top of each other. And that's paired with the rhythmic chugging, so. And then the fill that ends each passage is. And it can be challenging to get from here up here quickly and cleanly, which is why when I move up, I like to keep my pinky right here in the third string where it is for that first chord. Without moving anything else except my pinky, just bring it up. Keep the pinky planted right there in the 13th fret. And play that fill to go right back down. And this is another reason why I say it's important to play along to a click or play with a drummer if you can, if you have the access to a drummer, is these things are technical not because there's a lot of notes in them. They're technical because the feel is very awkward if you're not used to playing around a 4/4 groove and the whole song is in 4/4. It's just the feel and the syncopation of the parts will throw someone off who's not accustomed to playing that way. So that's why I always say practice to a click, practice where there's some sort of rhythmic element that ties you down and forces you to be on time.